everybody, and welcome to another episode of Psyched for Psychology. My name is Krista Overson. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I usually have my trusted co-host, Brett Cushing, with me. He is off doing a training today, but I am very excited to have another wonderful guest with me today. Rachel Slough Johnson is here, and they're going to be talking with us today about a very important and very interesting topic of trauma-sensitive yoga. Hi, Rachel.
Hello. Glad
How
to
are
be
you?
here.
I'm so glad you're here. We were just talking before we pressed recording about I I was sharing that with being without my co-host today, I was a little nervous. So a friend of mine had suggested that we do a little fall theme icebreaker. And so I thought, since it's fall and it's kind of that time of year, before we jump into our topic of the day, I thought, why not do a little game called This or That, which is kind of a fun, corny little activity. So basically, Rachel, I am curious, if you had to pick between apple pie or pumpkin pie, what would you pick?
Hard. I would probably go apple, although I'd be very happy with either.
Yes, me too. Although, yeah, I think apple as well. My mom makes a amazing apple pie. How about like journaling versus hiking?
And both isn't an answer, is it?
You know what? I say you can say both. That's what I think.
Go with that.
Okay, both. Awesome. I would say hiking, although journaling is, important too. How about apple orchard or pumpkin patch?
I'll go apple orchard on that one.
That one, yeah.
My spouse's family has a hobby orchard, and it's really lovely every year to go up and we'll press cider and get the family together.
That's amazing. I want a hobby orchard. Well, see, now I want to delve into that because I'm like, that sounds so interesting, but I'll stay on the topic. I'll just do a couple more. So, scarves or cozy socks?
Scarves, hands down. It's weird I'm not wearing one today. That's kind of the default.
It's that time of year, right? I would say cozy socks personally. I'm wearing some cozy socks right now, so that's pretty great. And then let's see, how about paint a pumpkin or carve a pumpkin?
Probably paint, although that's a tricky one to.
Yeah. These are tough decisions. I think they all sound really fun. So awesome. Well, now, thank you for humoring me with that. I think it's kind of fun to do a little fun thing. I have been so looking forward to talking about this. It's because there's trauma. It's trauma sensitive yoga, correct?
Trauma sensitive yoga.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Kind of a specific flavor within the wide spectrum of what trauma sensitive yoga can be.
Well, that's even better. Because I know just if you do kind of a brief search of trauma and yoga, there's like trauma informed, there's trauma sensitive, and this is trauma sensitive. Thank you. Okay, great. Well, I think one of the biggest things I wanted to ask is, how long have you been involved with this and what got you interested in it?
Yeah, I started back in grad school in 2014. I was talking with a mentor and kind of curious of what she saw in the field or where it might be going. And her prediction was that the body as treatment might be more important as we get further along. And so I took the initial training in 2014, did my master's thesis on it 2015, and then have been pretty active in the community since.
Wow.
And I guess also say that personally, I found in my own work that I live in my head and that only takes me so far. So I was looking for a way to get into my body in a way that felt safe enough, which I wasn't finding in the hot yoga classes or the HIIT heavy classes at the gym.
That is such a great point. Because I think you touched on exactly that kind of disconnect a lot of us feel between our head and the rest of our body, right? Or our mind and the rest of our body. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So finding ways to get from not only your thoughts and your mind to the rest of the body.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. So that is great. What else kind of got you? Oh, so you have a certification actually.
Yeah.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about what that process has been, and then we can get more into the methods.
Yeah, sure. So there's kind of two steps. One is the initial training, which is between 20 and 40 hours. You've got a choice. And that really breaks down what is trauma theory? What is this model? How did it come about? And then the second option is another 300-hour training spread out over the year. And that involves working with a small group. There's weekly seminars. And the final portion of the course is both kind of a compilation of some area of trauma that's of interest. And then you submit some videos of your work and meet with some of the lead instructors. One thing I love about this community is that we are required to submit a video every year to keep the certification, which means I have to really be conscious that I'm staying in the model and not letting it slip. It's also been a really lovely community in that there are many therapists, but there are also many yoga teachers, and they try to keep a balance between us because there's wisdom in both. And sometimes our clients really need a space in the community that doesn't involve feeling like a patient.
That's a great point. When I was just looking into this topic, I was wondering if it was a common thing that a lot of the certified, kind of facilitators or practitioners are therapists also. Is that a requirement or just common?
It's not. I think they have three kind of tracks, if you will. So one is lived experience, community healing. One is going through Yoga Alliance, registered yoga teacher, yoga therapist. And the final one is therapist, social worker, bachelor's level and up. Part of what I appreciate as a provider being able to offer this with clients is that we can bill insurance because it is evidence-based.
Oh, I didn't realize that you could bill for that.
It's because it's when there was a National Registry of Evidence-Based Practices. This is one of, along with prolonged exposure, EMDR, this is also there. And again, before that registry was dismantled, this was the only model studied and known for complex or relational trauma.
Wow.
So kind of honoring that hurt happens in relationship and can also be healed in relationship. So really one of the emphases of the model is creating a shared experience where we minimize coercion and have an experience to recognize there's always power dynamics, but also recognizing this is really, I'm coming alongside, I'm doing the same thing with you.
Nice. Because I was thinking about how to kind of explain the approach, and I was wondering if it would be at all helpful to talk about just like yoga. I mean, there's so many different kinds of yoga, right?
Right.
And this is a very specialized way of going about it. So I wonder if it'd be helpful to just kind of like really briefly talk about, most yoga classes. Yeah. If there's kind of what to or kind of what's the usual thing that most people have experienced versus this, right?
Right, absolutely. So one of the I think most overt differences is that there's an emphasis on invitational language. So
nice.
Most cues are, if you want, if you'd like, here's some choices.
Yeah.
And even if that's offered in mainstream classes, there seems to be an expectation of, but this is the right thing. Or this is, if you don't do it, you'll get an adjustment or you'll be the only one. It doesn't always feel like a true choice.
Sure. That's a great point. I actually, that made me remember times I've been in that word mainstream. That's what I was looking for, was the mainstream, more of a mainstream yoga class, right? So I've been in mainstream yoga classes, and it's, yeah, like you said, it's sometimes the teacher will actually come and like physically touch you. And I've been and adjust you or help you get into a position. And I've been in classes, thankfully, where the teacher will say, please raise your hand if you don't want to be touched. Right. And so that's great. But I'm guessing that there's also that aspect of, is there any touching with trauma center sensitive? Okay, no. Sure. That makes sense.
Well, and truly that's off the table, and helping folks find in their own bodies what feels safe or unsafe. We're also not generally teaching headstands or things where there is a risk of significant harm.
Yeah, good point. You're not teaching like very, very advanced poses. Sure.
Right.
Sure. So I think mainstream yoga, you're in a class with multiple other people, you've got a teacher. And I think what you were touching on earlier was there is the language is more of a direction, right? It's giving a directive, and then sort of the underlying or the tone of it is sort of like, you should be doing your best to do what I'm saying. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And the hope in this one is that it's tricky in healthcare, right? That the goal is non-attachment or not having an agenda. Well, also holding it, at least in a therapy context, of we sort of have an agenda. We'd like you to start feeling better, but not letting that be here is the way to do it, and here are the objectives for every session. It's held more lightly of the hope is you have whatever you need.
Well, I think I really want to emphasize this too, this difference, because, and feel free to jump in on anything I say, but I think in classes too, I know I've experienced in mainstream yoga, sometimes it's like, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to push myself. I'm going to, try to do this pose I've never done or hold it longer than I have before. And it sounds like with the trauma center sensitive yoga, it's not about that as so much as getting in touch with yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, sure.
And making that choice on purpose. If you want to push yourself, that's great.
There you go.
And if you want to give yourself permission to rest, that's also welcome.
Yeah.
I used to offer a group class of this at the YMCA, and
nice.
I remember being so excited when one of my really, really hurting, really hypersensitive folks actually took a nap during class.
Nice.
Because, of how beautiful she knew what she needed and trusted herself enough to do it.
Wow. And felt safe enough to.
Right. And
right.
Absolutely. Right. Such a vulnerable, I don't know, moving our bodies together can feel so tender.
Yeah. Actually, good point. Even just being physically in the room with other people and moving our bodies, that's very vulnerable.
Absolutely. Right? And I think, at least with some of the folks I've worked with, it sort of feels like there's a glaring light on their heads of, look at me, I'm traumatized. And feeling that hypervigilance or kind of that sense of needing to be on guard.
Yes.
And part of what can be lovely about this model is that we don't talk about our stories. It's shared understanding that something happened that overwhelmed your nervous system at some point. But we don't need to go any further than that.
Sure. I'm glad you said that too, because one of the things I was curious about is, I guess I think some people, when they hear trauma and then yoga put together, they might wonder, what is this all about? Like, who thought to put these two together, or at least like, what was the idea behind that? And I think it makes a lot of sense once you understand that. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I can give a little bit more of the history. So this started out once was the Trauma Center out of Boston.
Okay.
So Dave Emerson is one of the main leaders. He started teaching yoga to veterans in the early 90s and recognized that if he wanted this model to be accessible, it needed research and people needed to be able to offer it in healthcare. So this is sometimes they call it the originals trauma sensitive yoga in the sense of there's been a growing body of research. It is evidence based, and not that right that nothing's quite that clear cut, but
Sure.
I appreciate that there is a sense of humility in the model of asking folks about their experience, asking what needs to be changed. And part of the recertification is so you can meet with someone on leadership to talk about, okay, even in the last year, here are the changes we're making in the model for you to think about.
Okay, that's neat. No, I appreciate that. So Dave Emerson, and it was started, you said in the 90s, around the 90s?
Correct.
Great. And I think like you had touched on earlier, that mind-body connection. Well, first of all, having an approach that's evidence-based, right? Because I think sometimes people hear some of these methodologies and they might think like, oh, what is this? Right? Like even when I was explaining EMDR a few months back, I think sometimes people are like, well, is this even a researched thing? And so, yes, absolutely it is. And the same with this, right? And so it's like, so then that mind-body connection, as we talked about before, it's one thing to sit in a therapy office and talk, which is still important, right?
Right.
And this completely like reinvents the whole process, right? Because you're moving. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
So some of it feels like talk therapy in the sense of there's an emphasis on choice or preference because that's something a lot of our folks lack. So you might do this or you might do this. What's it like to make a choice for yourself? Knowing that the stakes aren't high, right? Moving your left arm versus your right arm first isn't hopefully going to be life-changing.
Sure.
So offering that practice of choice. One of the other elements, a technical term is interoception, or in other words, turning to your body for information.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So, right. Sometimes folks talk about having a gut sense or I feel in my shoulders and this isn't the right choice.
Yeah.
Our folks with trauma have learned to turn off their bodies to not hurt. So this can be a really, in my eyes, gentle, not that this isn't hard work because it is, but a very subtle way of, okay, if you want to move your arm, and if you do that, you might feel muscles contracting and releasing when you do that.
Yeah.
Just to start to build groundwork for body awareness.
Yes. No, was it interoception?
Yeah.
I love that because, that I think like you said, with trauma, I think a lot of us aren't connected with our bodies just generally, right? And with trauma, it's even this extra level of, I don't want to feel this. It's kind of, I've heard trauma described as a state, like being trapped in a state of horror or being trapped in a state of terror or even gut-wrenching emotion. Yeah. So the last thing you want to do if you're stuck in all of that is be in touch with your body, right? Right. And so what you're saying is having an opportunity to very gently and with kindness and with you making the decision, personally making the choice, is to start to get connected with the body again.
And frankly, in a way that just builds that neurology. I think sometimes other body modalities, which also have wisdom, kind of expect a baseline of you can feel something. And I think this can be an introduction of let's make it possible for your brain to even have that capacity so that we can do that other work. Yes.
I love this. And we're definitely, by the way, if you're listening at the end, make sure you stay and listen till all the way to the end. We're going to do just a brief, Rachel's going to lead us through a brief demonstration. Before we do that, I found myself wondering how would a patient or a client find out about this and find it? Yeah,
absolutely. So there is a national directory at traumasensitiveyoga.com. I also know that those of us with certifications tend to kind of hold that as
Mhm.
pride is the right word, but there is a standard that
Good.
needs to be upheld. And
Yeah.
so if you're looking for that particular model, we're pretty assertive about naming that.
Great.
I know at least in the Twin Cities area, there are several classes. Some are offered through clinics, some are through private studios.
Mhm.
Part of what's beautiful about all of the online work now is that you can look at the directory, and because yoga teachers aren't bound by state licensure laws, if you
Mm.
find someone that looks like you might connect with, you can ask about a telehealth session
Nice.
and offer
Nice.
that. Yeah.
Oh, I suppose so. Great that you pointed that out. You can do this via telehealth or via
Yeah.
video.
Right.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Yeah, that's wonderful. So the National Directory, and we will
Yep.
put some resources in our episode description so that people can just go right to it. Have you ever, when you are working with a client and you start to think, I think this yoga, this trauma sensitive yoga could be helpful.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you kind of start to introduce that to help them get kind of like on board? Yeah.
So a lot of entry points. For me, I think choice is perhaps one of the easiest entry points of if I see folks who would have been frozen by your this or that question because that's just not been a safe experience. I say, you know what, maybe there's a way we could practice choice in a different way together. I look for folks who want a group experience but don't necessarily want to have to tell their whole story. Or frankly, to talk at all if they don't want to. If folks tell me they've tried yoga or weightlifting, that's another separate issue if you wanted, but trauma-informed weightlifting is another sister branch of the same organization. So if folks have tried something like that and found that it just wasn't accessible, that can be an entry point.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. So just kind of pointing out like, it sounds like you didn't have a great experience with this, other thing, but maybe this would be helpful.
Right. That you didn't do anything wrong, right? That
exactly.
There are different approaches for different seasons. And maybe this is one you'd like to try.
Exactly. Great. Well, is there anything else that you want to share about this or that our listeners should know before we go into a demonstration, a brief demo?
Yeah. I guess I'd encourage folks to check out the website. There's a lot of information that's freely available. There's a lot of demos on YouTube. And the looking at the bigger picture. So right now they're working on offering this modality to refugees.
Wow.
So, I guess that's my encouragement. If there's curiosity in any amount, the information is there and available.
Good.
I'm happy to offer a group here at Nystrom if enough folks are interested. Billing insurance. And I also think there's wisdom in working with someone who isn't a clinician. So if that, I don't know, I guess I'd encourage folks to follow their curiosity, whether it's this or there's something else that feels right. But I think most of us benefit from trauma or not, right? The experience of having true choice, of being in community, and of having the option to check with our bodies if that feels right.
Right. And just, again, always the emphasis on if that feels right for you.
Yeah.
And having that choice. That's wonderful. Well, thank you for that. And however you would like to start the demonstration would be wonderful.
Yeah. Just for my sake, time check, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
How long are you thinking?
Take your time. We're totally good on time.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, if you'd like, you're welcome to join me for practice in any way that works for you. You're welcome to be seated or standing, or if you'd prefer to be on the ground, that works too. Maybe see what feels right for you, knowing that you're not stuck. You're always welcome to move in any way at any time. So if you'd like, you're welcome to notice your feet wherever you are, and perhaps to say hello to your feet, noticing where they are right now. Maybe making a choice if you'd like to keep them as they are, or if perhaps there's a movement that might feel right for you. So, one possibility for movement, if you want, could be rocking from heel to toe, toe to heel. So, if you'd like, maybe you'd like to rock your feet from heel to toe, toe to heel. That's option A. Option B could be bringing your feet rolling out to the sides, back to neutral and inward. So, option B, maybe you explore horizontally, rolling side to side. Option A, maybe forward and back. Or maybe there's another movement or stillness that you'd like to explore for you. I'll offer a count, and it's not meant as a restriction or a have to, but more of an encouragement or reminder that everything we do in our work has a clear beginning, middle, and end, and that you're never stuck. You're always welcome to move and know that there is a clear ending. So if you'd like, you're welcome to stay with your feet in any way that works for you. Maybe for 5 or 4, maybe 3 or 2, and 1 more if you'd like. And our next offering, if you want, could be to explore our legs a little bit. So you're welcome to choose one side, knowing that we'll offer time and space to both. And if you'd like, you're welcome to extend your leg to whatever straightness feels right for you. So maybe straightening one of your legs, keeping the knee bent however you need to feel like you can move. You have some choices from here. So one possibility might be bringing your toes toward or away from the ground. That's one option. Maybe you choose to have your leg more or less straight and move your toes from away from the ground. Another possibility here could be to add a forward fold. So if you'd like, you're welcome to bring your torso toward your leg at any amount you'd like. Maybe bringing your torso toward your leg. Maybe noticing any sensation that's accessible in any amount. So you might feel muscles in your leg. You might notice your breath or what it feels like to breathe from this shape. Maybe there's another noticing or lack of noticing. And feel free to welcome that too. So if you want, maybe staying with one leg just for 5 or 4, maybe 3 or 2, and 1 more if you like, perhaps staying on that side, perhaps offering the same-ish options for your other leg. So if you want, maybe straightening one leg, heel on the ground, maybe lifting your toes toward and away from the ground, maybe choosing stillness. You may wish to add a forward fold, bringing your torso toward your foot in any amount. You may notice if this is the same or different than one leg, if that's accessible. You might notice your breath. You may wish to coordinate breath and movement. That's another choice. So you may wish to inhale as you lift your toes and exhale as you drop them. So maybe inhaling as you lift your toes and exhaling as you drop. You're also welcome to keep breath and movement separate if that feels right for you. So maybe if you like, noticing what you notice, feeling what you feel, making change at any time, any reason. Perhaps staying with your foot, your leg in any way that works for you. Maybe for 5 or 4, maybe 3, 2, and 1 more if you'd like. Maybe finding your way to neutral or center, taking any movement or stillness you want. So that's just kind of a short practice. If this were a full class, I would typically offer about 40 to 45 minutes of movement and some time for stillness or practicing rest, which may be stillness or maybe more movement. And then offering folks a chance to reflect on what they're noticing here and now,
Nice.
which is also a way to give me feedback of if something didn't feel right for you, can you say that and have someone in authority, which I use loosely, be able to both hear that and make that change with you?
Yes, absolutely. That was so, just my own experience of it was so, I felt very free to listen to my body. And even though it was a short demonstration, again, just it was like with every cue or every suggestion, there was that choice element.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And then it was, if that feels right for you, you might, right. And then I got to choose, which again, just having never experienced that paired with yoga as much before, it again, I appreciate it so much. Just that like, oh, I choose.
You do. And,
right.
And you can trust your choice without any pressure from anyone else.
Exactly. Like, oh, I'm going to stick out because I'm the only one doing this, that, or the other thing, right?
Exactly.
It's not like that. Yeah.
No. Yeah. And actually, one of the things I've appreciated about telehealth is that when I offer groups, I encourage folks to actually turn camera off for the movement section.
I love that.
We'll come together at the beginning and the end, but no one's going to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for coming and talking with us about trauma-centered, trauma-sensitive yoga.
Yes.
And we will definitely put some resources with our podcast description so that people know how to find this method and how to find you. And so again, just thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
My pleasure. Thanks.
All right, everyone. We'll catch you on another episode of Psyched for Psychology.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.